Religion has long been a powerful force in American politics, shaping policy, voter alignment, and campaign strategies. Politicians across the spectrum have sought to appeal to religious communities, recognizing the strong influence that faith-based values hold in the electorate. One such figure who expertly wielded religious rhetoric to galvanize political support is Donald J. Trump. His campaigns in 2016 and 2020 were characterized by appeals to Christian evangelical voters, many of whom became ardent supporters of his presidency. Despite Trump's unconventional personal background, a thrice-married businessman with a history of controversial behavior, he managed to secure a significant portion of the evangelical vote. His use of faith-based rhetoric helped solidify his base, align his political brand with Christian nationalism, and influence key policy decisions that aligned with the conservative Christian agenda. This article will explore how Trump's campaigns leveraged religious rhetoric, how his messages resonated with key voting blocs, and the broader implications of using religion as a political tool. This deep dive will unravel the complex relationship between faith, power, and political strategy in one of the most polarizing presidencies in modern American history. But how exactly did Trump, a seemingly unlikely champion of religious conservatism, secure the unwavering support of Christian voters? Keep reading to find out. Religion has played an essential role in shaping American political life since the founding of the nation. From the Puritan roots of New England to the moral crusades of abolitionists, faith has driven key political movements. The fusion of religion and politics intensified in the 20th century, particularly during the rise of the Christian right in the 1970s and 1980s, when evangelical Christians became a powerful force within the Republican Party. The Christian right, energized by figures like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, emphasized socially conservative issues like opposition to abortion, same-sex marriage, and secularism in public life. This movement gave rise to a powerful voting bloc that consistently supported Republican candidates. By the time Trump entered the political scene in 2016, the religious right had become a major component of the GOP, and appealing to this base was a crucial aspect of any successful Republican campaign. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan famously described America as a shining city on a hill, using a biblical image to inspire national purpose and connect with religious voters. George W. Bush, an evangelical Christian, appealed to this bloc with his emphasis on personal faith and values. Both used their religious identity as a core component of their campaigns, but their approaches were seen as sincere extensions of personal beliefs. When Trump emerged as a serious candidate in 2016, he did not follow the same script. Unlike Reagan or Bush, Trump was not known for being personally devout. His personal history, including divorces, allegations of infidelity, and brash public persona, seemed at odds with the evangelical values that had been politically important in previous decades. Yet, Trump's understanding of religion as a cultural force rather than a personal conviction allowed him to use faith as a political tool, crafting a message that would resonate with millions of religious Americans. The question remains, how did Trump, a political outsider with a secular lifestyle, manage to attract the same religious base that supported previous faith-driven politicians? The answer lies in the next section, where we explored Trump's strategic relationship with the evangelical base. Trump's relationship with the evangelical community was paradoxical. On the surface, he did not appear to embody the values typically associated with evangelical Christianity, such as humility, repentance, and piety. Yet, he managed to secure overwhelming support from evangelical voters, with 81% of white evangelicals voting for him in 2016. How did Trump, a man known for his brash demeanor, multiple marriages, and past controversies, win the hearts of the religious right? The answer lies in his ability to align himself with the political and cultural priorities of evangelicals. Trump's promise to appoint conservative judges, his outspoken opposition to abortion, and his stance on religious freedom resonated deeply with this community. His vocal defense of religious liberty and his willingness to fight against what many evangelicals saw as an encroaching secularism won him support. Evangelical voters were willing to overlook his personal flaws in exchange for the policies and judicial appointments that aligned with their religious convictions. In the eyes of evangelical voters, Trump's imperfections were overshadowed by his perceived role as a protector of Christian values. They viewed his presidency as a necessary bulwark against progressive ideologies that they believed threatened the fabric of traditional American society. His candidness, brash style, and outsider status resonated with many evangelicals who were frustrated with establishment politicians who they felt had neglected their concerns for decades. Moreover, Trump presented himself as a defender of religious identity in a time when many evangelicals felt their values were under attack from a secular society. The rise of movements supporting LGBTQ+ rights, reproductive rights, and secular policies made evangelicals feel marginalized. Trump's rhetoric about draining the swamp and fighting the war on Christianity spoke directly to their fears. He cast himself as the warrior fighting on behalf of Christian America, which appealed to evangelicals who had grown tired of political correctness and what they perceived as an erosion of their influence. Despite Trump's seemingly un-Christian behavior, evangelicals saw him as a necessary force in a culture war. For them, Trump was a flawed instrument used by God to achieve a greater purpose, protecting their religious freedom and values. If you thought Trump's personal relationship with religion was intriguing, wait until you see how religious leaders themselves played into his rise to power. Key evangelical leaders played a critical role in legitimizing Trump's candidacy within the Christian community. Figures like Jerry Falwell Jr., Franklin Graham, and Paula White became prominent supporters of Trump, helping to bridge the gap between the candidate's personal life and the values of the evangelical electorate. These religious leaders defended Trump's character flaws by emphasizing his policy positions and his commitment to fighting for religious freedom and conservative judicial appointments. Jerry Falwell Jr., president of Liberty University, was one of the first major evangelical leaders to endorse Trump in 2016. Falwell's endorsement came as a surprise to many within the evangelical community, as Trump did not fit the mold of a traditional Christian candidate. However, Falwell argued that Trump's policies and ability to fight for Christian values outweighed any concerns about his personal behavior. Falwell famously compared Trump to biblical figures like King David, who, despite personal sins, was chosen by God to lead. Franklin Graham, son of famed evangelist Billy Graham, also played a pivotal role in promoting Trump within the evangelical community. While Graham was initially critical of Trump during the primaries, he quickly became one of the president's most vocal supporters, praising Trump's commitment to religious freedom and his defense of Christianity in public life. Graham frequently appeared at Trump rallies and events, reinforcing the idea that Trump was a protector of Christian values. Perhaps the most influential religious figure in Trump's inner circle was Paula White, a televangelist and proponent of the prosperity gospel. White became Trump's personal spiritual advisor and often led prayers at his rallies and events. She publicly defended Trump's character and faith, framing him as a man chosen by God to lead the nation during a time of crisis. White's presence and influence helped solidify Trump's support among Pentecostals and Charismatics, further expanding his base within the Christian community. Through the endorsement of these and other religious leaders, Trump was able to secure the trust and votes of evangelical Christians who may have otherwise been skeptical of his personal character. These leaders provided Trump with religious credibility, assuring their congregations that supporting Trump was not only politically advantageous but also morally justified. But Trump's appeal to evangelicals wasn't just about who supported him, it was also about the key moments where his religious rhetoric captivated the masses. Let's delve into these pivotal moments. Throughout his 2016 and 2020 campaigns, Trump skillfully employed religious rhetoric at key moments to solidify his support among Christian voters. One of the most notable instances was his pledge to appoint conservative justices to the Supreme Court who would overturn Roe v. Wade. This promise resonated deeply with pro-life evangelical voters and became a central pillar of his faith-based appeal. Trump's nomination of 3 conservative justices, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, was viewed as a monumental achievement for evangelical Christians who had been fighting for decades to shift the balance of the Supreme Court. By following through on his promise, Trump earned the unwavering loyalty of evangelical voters, who saw his judicial appointments as essential to protecting religious liberty and curbing the advance of liberal social policies. Another significant moment came during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests when Trump staged a controversial photo op in front of St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., holding a Bible aloft. While critics accused Trump of using the Bible as a prop for political gain, many of his supporters viewed the act as a symbolic defense of Christianity against the forces of chaos and secularism. For evangelicals who felt their faith was being marginalized in a rapidly changing society, this image of Trump holding the Bible sent a powerful message that he was on their side, defending their values. In addition to these high-profile moments, Trump frequently invoked religious language in his speeches. He often referenced God, religious freedom, and the need to protect Christianity from external threats. His speeches at rallies in states with large evangelical populations were filled with references to Judeo-Christian values and the need to stand up for religious freedom. These messages resonated deeply with evangelicals, who believed that their way of life was under attack from a secular, progressive agenda. Trump's rallies became arenas where religious symbolism and political messaging were intertwined. His speeches were punctuated by appeals to faith and Christian values, and he often invited religious leaders to speak or pray during his events. These public displays reinforced the notion that Trump was a protector of Christian values, even if he himself was not a conventional religious figure. These pivotal moments of religious rhetoric were not isolated. They were part of a broader strategy rooted in Christian nationalism, which became a defining element of Trump's political appeal. But what exactly is Christian nationalism, and how did it become a driving force in Trump's campaign? Let's explore this next. Trump's campaign rhetoric frequently aligned with the ideology of Christian nationalism, a belief system that asserts the United States was founded as a Christian nation and should be governed according to Christian principles. This ideology views Christianity as central to American identity and history and seeks to preserve the nation's Christian heritage in public life. Trump's frequent use of phrases like "Make America Great Again" and his emphasis on restoring traditional values resonated with Christian nationalists who viewed his presidency as a vehicle for preserving the religious and cultural identity of the United States. His rhetoric often invoked a sense of nostalgia for a time when Christian values were more prominent in public life, and his supporters believed that his leadership would return the country to those ideals. Christian nationalism also played a role in shaping Trump's immigration policies and rhetoric. His calls for building a border wall and restricting immigration were often framed in religious terms, with Trump presenting himself as a defender of the American way of life against foreign influences. This messaging appealed to Christian nationalists who saw immigration as a threat to the cultural and religious identity of the nation. Trump's portrayal of immigrants as a danger to Christian values further solidified his support among voters who saw themselves as defenders of America's Christian heritage. The influence of Christian nationalism also extended to Trump's foreign policy, particularly in his strong support for Israel. Evangelical Christians, many of whom hold a dispensationalist view of biblical prophecy, have long viewed the state of Israel as central to God's plan for the end times. Trump's decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem was widely praised by evangelicals, who saw it as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy and a sign that Trump was advancing God's plan. By aligning himself with Christian nationalism, Trump was able to tap into a powerful ideological current that helped him secure support from religious voters who saw his presidency as a way to preserve their faith's influence on American society. His use of Christian nationalist rhetoric not only energized his base, but also created a sense of urgency among his supporters, who felt they were fighting to preserve the very soul of the nation. Now that we understand the ideological foundation of Trump's religious rhetoric, let's explore how this approach translated into concrete policy actions and legislative decisions during his presidency. Trump's use of religious rhetoric had a significant impact on his policy agenda, particularly in areas related to religious liberty, abortion, and judicial appointments. One of the most consequential outcomes of Trump's presidency was the appointment of 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. These appointments solidified a conservative majority on the court, which eventually led to the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022, fulfilling a long-standing goal of the evangelical movement. In addition to his judicial appointments, Trump implemented policies that aligned with the priorities of his religious base. For example, his administration expanded the ability of religious organizations to receive federal funding while still maintaining their religious mission. This policy move was celebrated by faith-based organizations that had long argued for the freedom to operate without compromising their religious convictions. Trump also issued executive orders that protected religious organizations from being forced to provide contraceptive coverage under the Affordable Care Act, a move that pleased religious conservatives who viewed this mandate as an infringement on their religious freedom. His administration made religious liberty a cornerstone of its domestic and foreign policy, frequently citing the protection of religious groups as a key goal. On international issues, Trump's administration prioritized the protection of Christians and other religious minorities in conflict zones. His State Department increased efforts to combat religious persecution, particularly in countries where Christians faced violence and oppression. This focus on religious freedom abroad was another way in which Trump aligned his policies with the values of his evangelical base. These policy moves were designed to appeal to religious voters who prioritize the preservation of religious liberty and the protection of life. By delivering on these promises, Trump cemented his relationship with the evangelical community, even as his personal conduct continued to raise questions among some religious leaders. But while many celebrated Trump's accomplishments on behalf of religious conservatives, there were also vocal critics who saw his use of faith-based rhetoric as disingenuous or harmful. This brings us to the next key question. What were the major criticisms of Trump's use of religion as a political tool? While Trump's use of religious rhetoric was successful in mobilizing his base, it also drew significant criticism from both religious and secular voices. Many religious leaders, particularly within mainline Protestant and Catholic traditions, criticized Trump for what they saw as the manipulation of faith for political gain. They argued that Trump's actions were inconsistent with the teachings of Christianity, particularly his treatment of marginalized communities, his inflammatory rhetoric, and his personal behavior. For example, prominent religious figures like Pope Francis and leaders of the National Council of Churches condemned Trump's policies on immigration, climate change, and race relations as antithetical to Christian values of compassion and care for the poor and vulnerable. These critics argued that Trump's focus on religious liberty for Christians often came at the expense of other marginalized groups, including immigrants and refugees, who are also a key concern in the teachings of the Bible. Secular critics also accused Trump of exploiting religious symbolism for political theater, particularly in moments like the St. John's Church photo op. For many, these gestures rang hollow and appeared to reduce faith to a mere political tool rather than a deeply held conviction. Critics argued that Trump's use of religion was cynical and opportunistic, aimed more at solidifying his political base than at advancing any genuine moral or spiritual agenda. Additionally, many commentators expressed concern about Trump's embrace of Christian nationalism, arguing that it created a more divisive and exclusionary political climate. By aligning himself so closely with one religious group, Trump alienated non-Christian and secular Americans, fueling polarization and deepening the cultural divide. Critics warned that Trump's religious rhetoric was contributing to a growing sense of Christian grievance and victimhood, which could have long-lasting negative effects on the fabric of American society. Despite these criticisms, Trump's religious supporters largely stood by him, viewing his policy achievements as outweighing any concerns about his personal conduct or the sincerity of his faith. So, how did Trump's approach to using religion compare to other politicians, past and present? Let's explore this further. Trump's use of religious rhetoric stands in contrast to the approaches of other recent politicians, both Republican and Democrat. Unlike figures like George W. Bush or Barack Obama, who often frame their faith in terms of personal spirituality and humility, Trump's religious rhetoric was more combative and instrumental. Where Bush spoke of his faith as a guiding moral compass, Trump framed religion as part of a broader political battle. Bush's faith was deeply personal, and he often spoke about how his relationship with God influenced his decisions and actions. For Bush, religion was a source of guidance and humility. His speeches were filled with references to prayer, forgiveness, and personal reflection. Similarly, Barack Obama, though less overtly religious, frequently invoked religious themes of unity, compassion, and social justice. Obama often cited his Christian faith as a source of inspiration for his progressive policies, particularly in areas like healthcare, poverty, and immigration. Trump, on the other hand, used religion primarily as a political tool, rather than as a personal guide. His speeches and policies were designed to appeal to a specific religious group, white evangelicals, rather than to a broader, more diverse religious constituency. His focus was less on personal morality and more on political power, which set him apart from both Bush and Obama. Additionally, Trump's embrace of Christian nationalism, which emphasizes the idea that America is a Christian nation with a divinely ordained destiny, marked a departure from the more inclusive religious rhetoric used by previous presidents. Where Bush and Obama sought to unite Americans across different faiths, Trump's approach often created divisions, pitting Christians against non-Christians and fostering a sense of religious grievance among his supporters. Trump's combative style and his use of religion as a political weapon were unique, but they were also highly effective. His ability to galvanize evangelical voters helped him secure victory in 2016 and maintain their loyalty throughout his presidency. But what does Trump's religious rhetoric mean for the future of American politics? To answer that, we must examine his legacy and its impact on the political landscape. Trump's use of religious rhetoric has left a lasting legacy on American politics. His presidency has further solidified the alignment between the Republican Party and evangelical Christianity, and his success in mobilizing religious voters has set a new standard for future Republican candidates. Even after his presidency, Trump remains a powerful figure within the evangelical community, and his influence continues to shape the political landscape. The rise of Christian nationalism during Trump's presidency has also had long-term implications for the country's political discourse. As more politicians adopt elements of this ideology, the division between religious and secular voters has deepened, contributing to the broader polarization of American society. Trump's use of religious rhetoric has sparked a debate within Christian communities about the role of faith in politics. While some religious leaders have embraced Trump's approach, others have called for a return to a more humble and compassionate form of political engagement. This debate will likely continue to shape the role of religion in American politics for years to come. Furthermore, Trump's legacy has impacted how future Republican candidates engage with religious voters. The expectation is now set that candidates must not only support conservative religious policies, but also actively demonstrate their commitment to defending Christian values in the public square. This shift in expectations has influenced the political landscape, as future candidates may adopt similar religious rhetoric to appeal to the same voter base that propelled Trump to power. But even as Trump's influence endures, the broader implications of his presidency for American democracy and religious freedom are still unfolding. His embrace of Christian nationalism and use of religion as a political tool have raised critical questions about the balance between faith and governance in a pluralistic society. As we conclude, it's crucial to reflect on what Trump's religious rhetoric means for the future of American politics and the evolving relationship between faith and power. Donald Trump's campaigns in 2016 and 2020 demonstrated the power of religious rhetoric in American politics. By aligning himself with evangelical Christians and adopting the language of Christian nationalism, Trump was able to galvanize a powerful voting bloc and reshape the Republican Party. His presidency, marked by significant policy achievements for religious conservatives, reinforced the connection between religion and politics in the United States. While Trump's use of faith-based rhetoric was effective, it also sparked criticism and raised important questions about the role of religion in public life. His presidency has left a lasting impact on the political landscape, setting the stage for future candidates to engage with religious voters in new and potentially more divisive ways. As the debate over the role of religion in politics continues to evolve, Trump's legacy will remain a powerful reminder of how faith can be both a unifying and polarizing force in American political life. His use of religious rhetoric, though controversial, tapped into deep cultural and ideological currents that will continue to shape the nation for years to come. The ultimate question remains: will future leaders continue to leverage religion in the same way, or will America's political discourse evolve toward a more inclusive vision of faith and governance?